So here's another planter dilemma that I come into sometimes, is something that I want to use as a planter without a bottom. Well, that's kind of perfect. Sometimes I just set it straight on the ground, fill it up with dirt, plant it like that. But if I want it to be mobile, I just find a pot that I can fit inside of it and use. I don't really care which way this pot goes for this particular planter, but I may even have it looks filled over, something like that. But that's the solution to that. If you don't like seeing the rim, you can always cut off the edge. Makes no difference to me sometimes, just kind of depends on where it's going, if it's something that I want to look at or not. You see? And I'm going to be showing all the steps that I take to repurpose different types of planters. Drainage holes, any weight that needs to go in the bottom, or any type of fillers that I would use to fill up the voids of containers. And so the way that I figured out where I want my holes is, since the bottom of this has ridges, I drilled my holes on the high points inside the container, so that way the low ones can actually retain a little bit of water. When some moisture can be retained in the bottom for a little bit, it gives the roots a chance to take up more water when they need it, instead of all the water coming out before they have a chance to even get any. So when I do drill in something that has ridges, I keep in mind of when that's right side up, where the low points are and where the high points are. So here's some extra rain boots that the family drew out of. The smaller the container's gonna be, the less holes I'm gonna put in it, because it's already gonna be drying out quicker than other ones. So I'm gonna just do one hole in each boot for now, and if it needs more later, I can always add one later, but rather be safe than sorry. So, but as a general rule of thumb, the smaller the container, the smaller the drain hole you want, because smaller containers do dry out quicker. You might want to take insoles out. Those might get in the way a little. If they come out, if they have removable insoles, definitely take those out. Those can come in handy later. Fillers, if needed. So I picked up this grommeting tool on Amazon, and I've used grommets in the past, and it's always been a pretty big ordeal. You have to set up an area where you can hammer to actually set the grommet in place. However, this is a handheld grommet tool, which I didn't even know they made. Not saying it's perfect, there's some improvements I would definitely do. However, it's definitely faster than doing it the old-fashioned way. It's got a magnetic seat where you place the grommet. Okay. So one end of the grommet goes there, the other end gets placed there. The directions were really bad, so in case you are interested in these, the cupped sides face each other. They don't explain that in the directions, but the sides that are cupped upwards, that it sits in the seat the same direction, cupping up. And I think it's a good tool to use for hanging the boots. One little press and it's done. See how simple? I'm going to do each side because I'm not sure what direction that I'll have them hung in, and then also it gives me options to change it up later. So I'm going to do a grommet on each side of the boots so they can hang for a longer time in different directions with more options. So for these boots, since they're so shallow and narrow for a planter, I'm not going to use any drain support in the bottom. Normally I would put rocks or some type of bulky item to help for drainage, but since there's such little space in here, I'm not going to worry about drainage because I know it'll dry out fast. Say they weigh about maybe the equivalent to a gallon of milk. Once they're filled with dirt, they will take on a little weight when you water them, but like I said, they're going to dry out pretty quick. They'd be perfect for succulents. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to put in them. Hoping to put something colorful for spring. However, I'm not sure what kind of options I'll have, but I'm just gonna stick him in here for now. So here's an example of a container that has a really big void in the bottom that I don't want to waste my good soil filling it when I know the plants do not need that kind of depth. So one of the options is to crush these and just set them in there however they land, whatever you use, you just want to make sure it doesn't like seal off your drainage holes, because that would defeat the purpose of having drainage. But for a repurposed planter, if you do end up accidentally sealing off your drainage holes, it's not the end of the world. So for this particular one, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to save this for a bigger planter where I don't have to worry about the drainage holes as much, and I'm going to actually put these in upside down and crush it. I'm going to be using a substantially less amount of dirt, which is always good. Still really heavy, but not too heavy to move, which is really what I'm going for. So, goal accomplished. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this plant in there. But since I didn't come over here with the intention to pot up everything, I was just prepping the containers. I'm not going to worry too much right now about what I'll be putting in there. But since that Elysium was practically staring me in the face. In this one, I'm probably going to use a combination of things because I don't have quite enough styrofoam to fill up the void that I'd like to fill. I'm even going to use these foam inserts. Cut these into smaller pieces, tear them, whatever, for the block. What I'm going to need for materials like this, I just let people at work know, hey, if you have any styrofoam at home, or if you get any packages of styrofoam, please bring it to work. I could use it. So, I'm just going to semi-line these up. Using zip ties in metal that you've drilled the holes is the metal's sharp, and if you tighten the zip tie too tight, it'll just cut right through it. Boy, the highway's really busy today. Normally it's not that busy, but of course today I decided to video it. So if this doesn't hold the lid up, I'm okay with that, because at least I know the lid will stay with it, but I'm hoping so. So I'm going to stop while on my head, but that's a really good fit, and even if it gets bumped, the worst thing that can happen is it may close if somebody really pushes on it. But okay, and I could probably do these two right around here just for added. I always like to put the square part, this part that you're going to cut, out of sight, in the back, facing the back. Some people don't care about that stuff, but those little details, they show up later, and sometimes when they show up, there's nothing you can do about it, and you just wish that you would have thought about it. So that's just one tip when you're working with zip ties, to pull in the direction that you know people aren't going to be looking. The wind is picking up and it's getting noisier around the farm, so this is probably the last, one of the last ones I'll be able to do today. Since this planter is very shallow and the cocoa fiber is very thin, I'm going to put some strips of cardboard layered in with the soil to slow down the water drainage just a little bit, and over time this will break down. I'm using the pieces with no plastic tape, of course, otherwise that would just be a mess later and ugly. It would show up sometime somewhere. Anyway, just setting it in the bottom to slow down at the rate water's going to pass through it. It's not going to last forever, but neither is this planter. And what's in it I only need to last a couple of months for display. Slowing down the rate that water can go through it is going to give the roots and the soil time to absorb the moisture, because sometimes when something dries out fast and you just go pour water on it and walk away, all the water goes around the outside and falls out. So this will help wick in a little moisture before it has time to run through the bottom, or at least slow it down, because it'll have to saturate this to get through to where the plants, I think, will do better and not dry out as quick. That's all the containers I'll be prepping today, so be on the lookout for the next phase of these planters and what goes in them.